I mean, it sounds like two high school girls.
And I told him things that what I do, and he said, no way. And I said, way.
The way he recounts these conversations is one more demonstration that he's just not fit to be president.
Last night on Twitter, or X, deranged right-wing billionaire Elon Musk had an interview with another deranged right-wing billionaire, Donald Trump, and it was disastrous both in terms of substance and technicality, and we have to talk about it. But before we do, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have several clips to talk about in this video, but we're going to start with this one here because this was by far the most engaging and substantively meaningful and honest part of Donald Trump's disastrous conversation with Elon Musk. Yeah, the joke is that nobody could hear him, right? So it started out as disastrous as Ron DeSantis's campaign inauguration. I don't know if you remember that, his inaugural event when he ran for president against Donald Trump back in 2023. He also launched his campaign on Twitter, or X, and it went about as well. USA Today has a pretty good breakdown, and we're going to get into some fact checks as well, courtesy of CNN. Trump rambles, slurs his way through Elon Musk interview. It was an unmitigated disaster. For a fascism-curious billionaire who loves cuddling up to right-wing loons, Elon Musk sure is good at making right-wing politicians look stupid. Trump had loudly trumpeted a planned Monday night interview with Musk that would stream on X, but much like the disastrous X-platformed launch of Ron DeSantis, the Musk-Trump interview failed to launch, leaving social media users laughing at the collective incompetence. Since Vice President Harris rose to the top of the Democratic presidential ticket last month, Trump's re-election campaign has been flailing. His childish attacks against her aren't working. His racist comments about her mixed-race heritage have repelled all but his most loyal supporters, and his vice presidential pick, J.D. Vance, has become less likable every time he speaks. So his answer, weirdly, was to sit down with Musk and talk about what would undoubtedly be a very online audience that doesn't represent the broader electorate. Had the conversation gone off without a hitch, it would still have been odd and largely useless for Trump's efforts to halt Vice President Harris's momentum. But the online interview went off the rails with a multitude of hitches. X users erupted with either frustration or laughter as the planned start time passed and nothing could be accessed. It took more than 40 minutes before the interview could start and be heard by anyone. It was amateur hour, and the last thing a campaign struggling to project competence needed. In May 2023, when DeSantis' presidential campaign premiered at the glitch-tastic interview with Musk on what was then called Twitter, Trump mocked the debacle. Writing on social media, the DeSantis Twitter launch is a disaster. His whole campaign will be a disaster. Watch. On behalf of DeSantis, allow me to say this. Of course, things didn't get better for Trump once the interview was able to proceed. He was rambling, babbling on about crowd sizes and immigration and President Biden and whatever else seemed to pass through his mind. He was so badly slurring his words, raising questions about his health, and doing nothing to knock down rising concerns about his age and well-being. He sounded like a disoriented, racist Daffy Duck. Musk, meanwhile, has the interviewing skills of a stoned introvert. He did little but cheerlead Trump and agree with every bizarro thing that fell out of his mouth, while occasionally going on the kind of odd right-wing tangents you'd expect from a man too rich to ever be told to pipe down. Okay, so it goes on like this, and we're going to play some examples. So one of the standout examples that's gone viral is Trump talking about a conversation he allegedly had with Russian dictator Vladimir Putin. This is audio from the interview with Musk in which Trump recounts the story.
And again, I said to Vladimir Putin, I said, don't do it. You can't do it, Vladimir. You do it, it's going to be a bad day. You cannot do it. And I told him things that what I do, and he said, no way. And I said, way. And again,
that's real. That's not satire. That's real. That was, Sylvester the cat, suckering succotash and stuff like that. Trump getting his way, slurring his way through this ridiculous conversation. And that's how he recounts a foreign policy conversation he had with a Russian dictator. Now, John Bolton, who was Donald Trump's national security advisor, a lifelong conservative Republican, somebody who has worked diligently and loyally for Republican presidents, including Trump, he was asked about that conversation and Trump's recounting of it after the Musk interview on CNN. And this is what John Bolton, an expert who worked personally with and for Donald Trump and is an expert on national security and foreign policy, this is what he had to say.
What do you make of one, just that story, but also Trump's argue of how much influence he has on the Russian leader?
Well, I think Trump's making that up. He certainly didn't have that conversation with Putin when I was in the White House. I don't believe he had it before then. I can't really speak to what came after. But this is another case of Trump making things up that it's hard to prove or disprove. He can say he had some private conversation at a dinner at a G20 meeting or something like that. I don't think it happened. And I don't think that there was really an occasion for Trump to have that conversation, but it fits the persona that Trump thinks he has. I personally, having watched Trump and Putin together on several occasions, having listened into their phone conversations, having myself met Putin on any number of occasions going back to October of 2001, I think that, that Putin essentially thinks that Trump is an easy mark. He doesn't respect him, but he understands that using flattery with Trump can get him a long way. I think if Trump did put together the meeting he says he wants to have between Zelensky and Putin in a room together to solve the Ukraine crisis, I think Putin would take Trump to the cleaners to Ukraine's detriment.
Well, I mean, it's an incredibly serious conversation, and obviously the Ukrainians are deeply involved, but just to hear him describing it as, I mean, it sounds like two high school girls. I told him things that what I would do, and he said, no way. And I said, way. I mean, is that how world leaders talk from your experience?
No, it's not even how Donald Trump talks. It's how he wished he talked and how he wished he could show that that he's the big alpha guy. But this is imagination on Trump's part. And it shows he really doesn't understand what's at stake here. He knows very little history. He certainly knows next to nothing about the history of Ukraine and Russia, which is deeply complicated even for experts. So to me, the way he recounts these conversations is one more demonstration that he's just not fit to be president.
That's brutal. That is from Donald Trump's own conservative Republican national security advisor, one of the members of the senior staff, a cabinet level official in the Trump administration, one of many, one of dozens who will not endorse him for a second term. This is just so fascinating. Before we get into the fact checks, this is so important, folks. If you're watching this, you have to have this in your back pocket because it's so valuable. This guy knows Trump professionally and politically far better than 99.5% of Trump supporters. He has an informed opinion about Donald Trump. We can also evaluate his biases. Is he a Democrat? Is he a liberal? Is he a progressive? Is he ideologically predisposed to Trump? No. Lifelong conservative Republican who worked to pursue lifelong conservative Republican ends, including Trump's own. Trump picked him, so Trump at least claims to have a real eye for talent. Well, he was the one who appointed John Bolton to that cabinet level position. So clearly he trusted Bolton, and Bolton thought that Trump would be a good president. So for Bolton to come out, and he said this for years, from a position of intimate personal experience, hey, this guy is an idiot. He is deeply ignorant. He is deeply uncurious. He's deeply uneducated. He's overconfident. He's, considered a useful idiot by these foreign dictators. That says something. If we really defer to informed opinions, then we should be taking Bolton's evaluations of Trump really to the bank, right? Because he actually knows better than the people who are advocating for support of Trump, right? It's again, I've used this example of, imagine you're hiring somebody and you have their resume and it looks pretty weak, but they're a candidate for the job. And so you call their previous employer and you speak to the people who worked for them or whom they worked for, or their peers, basically people in close proximity to them professionally. And if the vast majority of them say, hey, for the love of God, do not hire this person because they're really stupid and lazy and incompetent and arrogant, then you wouldn't hire them. And that's precisely what we have here with Donald Trump and so many people who know Trump better than virtually every Trump supporter, saying that the guy is a moron. And we know it not because we're ideologically predisposed to him. We really wanted him to succeed because we're on his team, but he's such a freaking idiot that we can't help but say, don't hire him. So again, in a rational world, people would be taking that to the bank, but that's proof that the Republican Party, unfortunately, has mutated into a cult of personality. Got another clip I want to play here, and then we'll jump into the fact checks courtesy of CNN.
The biggest threat is not global warming, where the ocean's going to rise 1/8 of an inch over the next 400 years. And you'll have more oceanfront property, right? So yeah,
Donald Trump is peddling, again, his climate change, global warming denialism, saying that it's no big deal. Sure, people are going to die and, it's going to impact migration patterns as people flee from the areas that are most affected from climate change, but it's not real. It's no big deal. And hey, there's going to be a lot more oceanfront property. What a completely tone deaf, anti-scientific, anti-fact-based, ridiculous point of view. And again, that entire conversation with Musk was littered with it once they got past the 40 minutes of technical difficulties. Now let's get into some fact checks.
And Daniel, as I like to say to folks, Daniel, you know Trump's lies better than maybe Trump does. You cataloged them for years. You know them all too well. And we heard a lot of them repeated last night.
We did. This was the same stuff I've been dealing with, some of them for 5+ years, been fact-checked dozens of times, but he keeps saying them, as we know.
Yeah, let's listen to this one bite about crime. Let's listen to that.
Their crime rate's coming down and our crime rate's going through the roof. And it's so simple. And you haven't seen anything yet because these people have come into our country and they're just getting acclimated.
But we know, generally speaking, crime is down across the country.
Crime is down, Jim. Yeah. This claim is not only not true, it's the opposite of reality. Crime has been falling for 1.5 years plus. Violent crime and murder significantly. We had a 6% decline in violent crime in 2023. It was a 15% decline in the first quarter of 2021. Even starker declines in murder, 13% in 2023, 26% in the first quarter of 2024. So these are preliminary figures. The precise numbers might change when we get the final numbers, but there is no doubt about the direction. Crime is certainly going down, and it is now lower, violent crime and murder, than they were in 2020 under President Trump.
Yeah, and Christian was talking about how the campaign wants to appeal to younger voters. Well, younger voters are concerned about climate change, and Trump had some thoughts on that. Let's listen.
The biggest threat is not global warming, where the ocean's going to rise 1/8 of an inch over the next 400 years. And you'll have more oceanfront property, right? The biggest threat is not that. The biggest threat is nuclear warming, because we have 5 countries now that have significant nuclear power.
What did you make of that?
So Trump says a lot of wrong things, Jim. This claim about the extent of sea level rise with global warming is one of the very wrongest. So Trump keeps saying sea levels are going to rise 1/8 of an inch in 200, 300, 400. Once he said 497 years. It is actually more than 1/8 of an inch now per year. So more per year than he says is going to happen in 4 centuries. According to NASA figures, it's about 1/6 of an inch per year, 0.17 inches per year today. Over 300, 400 years, we're talking about feet. And if we want to bring this point home for former President Trump, it is especially fast in Florida. We have a tide gauge right near Mar-a-Lago, and that data shows that sea levels right there are rising about 1/8 of an inch every 9 months. So he says every 400 years, it's every 9 months. And I'll add, he keeps making this joke, a sea level rise is going to give people more oceanfront property. Yes, it's a joke, but it's a ridiculous joke. We're talking about communities becoming uninhabitable, people losing their homes, infrastructure damage, more flooding, more destructive hurricanes. This is bad stuff. It's not really a laughing matter.
Yeah.
It's really not a laughing matter, but when you're a sociopathic billionaire at the height of privilege, it makes sense that Donald Trump would react that way, right? Because he just doesn't have any sort of empathy for other people. Now, not to belabor the point too much, but again, Trump made at least 20 false claims in his conversation with Elon Musk. Daniel Dale, the guy in that video, goes into more detail, talking about crime, fact-checking him on inflation. I think we have the worst inflation we've had in 100 years. They say it's 48 years. I don't believe it. They fact-check him on that. He framed this as an opinion, but it's baseless nonetheless, wrong in 2 different ways. Talking about climate change and sea levels, the number of people listening to the conversation. Trump did express uncertainty about the number, but his 60 million or something claim is false. At the time he made his remark, public data on X showed that there were 1.1 million accounts listening to the conversation, and it goes on and on and on. 20 false claims, at least, in that conversation. So again, it was disastrous both in terms of technicality and substance, and I can't imagine that it's going to make that much influence, certainly positively, for the Trump campaign. But it also proves that Elon Musk, a wildly influential right-wing billionaire, will bend over backwards to accommodate Trump and help propel him into the White House, which is why you and I have to work our butts off to make sure that that doesn't happen by fundraising, by canvassing, door knocking, by spreading the good news of the Harris Walz campaign. And in the meantime, let me know what you think. in the comments.